Please.
Can you tell us what did not go so well in 2016 for you?
The question is, what is the most gut-wrenching thing you can share publicly? Give us your sad information, Willie Jackson. When you look at hip-hop music, when you look at the news, when you look at the media, and you specifically analyze the images perpetuated about black male humanity, you see a very narrow spectrum of archetypes. You see athletes, you see entertainers, and you see criminals. And there's a lot of window dressing with black men that we come to expect that springs from a lot of really uncomfortable things, a lot of drug culture, a lot of prison culture. We wear our money, it's in our teeth. We wear our hair in a certain way, tattoos in all sorts of really creative places. The reality is that a lot of black men are really hurting inside. We are deeply, deeply insecure. We are drowning in shame inside. And we have a really hard time loving ourselves because nobody has taught us how. And what we have is a population of black men who are in relationships with women that they hate because we don't know how to love women. We don't know how to love ourselves. We like what women or our partners do for us and how they make us feel, but we don't actually like the people that we're with. And this creates a really challenging dynamic because the legacy of African Americans in this country is chattel slavery. And there was an institution of rape and destruction and plunder of our bodies and our communities and our families. And these repercussions continue to haunt us and to plague us. And we don't heal these things, we deal with these things. We're really good at managing, but we have never once stopped to heal ourselves as a community, as a people. And so these are the things that I was experiencing. There's a legacy of oppression that's in my bloodline. Black men are praised for our prowess and our physical attributes and our athleticism. We were bred this way. This is not a beautiful legacy of how we came to be what we are. It is harrowing. And it's a trippy thing to be praised for something that came about in such an ugly way, because you can't learn history without being horrified at how the natives have been treated, about how black folks have been treated. The natives went to war with the United States multiple times because they wouldn't give up the slaves. There are a lot of stories that we don't talk about. There are a lot of things that our bodies know. There are a lot of things that our culture has. There are a lot of stories that we don't consciously wrestle with in our circles that deeply affect the way that we show up in our work, in our lives, and in our families. And these have incredibly deep repercussions. So I'm a technologist, and there's this conversation about diversity and inclusion in tech. Why can't Facebook and Google, with all of that cash, seem to get more than a 1% to 2% black workforce despite all of this noise? And there are a few reasons why this is. There are a few reasons why black folks don't want to be in that culture. Discomfort registers as pain in the body. See, when you study the neurobiology of it, we physically feel these microaggressions. When people ask to touch our hair, ask why we talk like this, when we feel like imposters in these environments. Black folks are hurting in these environments. We don't want to be in some of these places. We would like the salary, we would like the status, but we don't actually want to be in those places and work with these people. It's not because they're bad people, it's not because we're bad people, it's because it hurts, because we're in pain. And so what I'm increasingly doing as I have these conversations is not really about the tactics in the business. We can talk sponsorships, we can talk sales psychology, we can talk that all day. But what I find most people really need to do is slow down and say, am I okay? Because I wasn't okay for a long time. And I didn't know that it was okay. I didn't know that you could have this conversation. And I spent most of 2016 rebuilding myself. And that was through mindfulness meditation, that was through
Informations.
so much information. It was a lot of things, but I will start with mindfulness because it was the framework upon which I started to rebuild myself. And what it allowed me to do is get alone with myself and understand what I was dealing with for the first time. Because I was going and going and going, I was doing and doing and doing, but I had never stopped to be alone with myself and to have a dialogue with myself. And so when you start to journal, when you start to slow down, when you start to have check-ins with yourself and to see what comes up, it changes everything. Because the reality is a lot of us are afraid to be alone with our thoughts, with ourselves, and with our affairs. And we spend our entire lives and our entire careers desperately trying not to be alone with ourselves. And then we invite somebody else to deal with what comes along with that. And you cannot divorce that from the work that we're trying to do in our community. You can't have a mess at home and have a spectacular professional life. You got to fix what's at home first. And so my life has transformed by learning how to be compassionate towards myself. I used to be so hard on myself. My sense of humor used to be so self-deprecating. And you know, I was able to hide behind being bad and bougie. I just want to try to. You weren't expecting that, were you? I was. So I'll give you. I gotta stop doing that. All of my life, I only know my story. All of my life, I was rewarded for being smart and charming and quick-witted. And so, don't do that, Reggie. Thank you. But I never developed a really strong work ethic. And so I was an adult with a great job. I was on a plane twice a week, making great money, had a big house, but I didn't know how to work. I didn't know how to work hard. You know, I got by. I'm not gonna say I should have been laid off, but a lot of my friends got laid off. And here I am. And I was able to walk away from that job. I worked for a tiny company called Accenture that currently employs 375,000 souls. Some refugees in the building? We'll talk later. And that lifestyle was not for me, so I left the world, but I consciously recognized the fact that there were a whole lot of folks who were so qualified for the job that I had, but I had the right degree. And, you know, I could tap dance on cue, and so, you know, people liked me, so I got by so far in life with those tools. And it feels good to, you know, do a punchline and then people laugh. It feels really great because we don't have to focus on the internal stuff. And I had to stop doing that. I had to have real conversation and really, really slow down. And so there's not like a 12-step process because everybody's process is different. Everybody's carrying different things. We are all a product of our childhood experiences and the traumas that we've incurred along the way. Broken adults are nothing but children who need healing, who've just gotten older. Right? And that's why we have children who have to parent their parents. That's why we have emotionally incestuous relationships because we come from a system of dysfunction and we don't know how to talk about it. We don't have the language to deal with these things. I didn't know there was something called intergenerational trauma. I didn't know there was a brother named Sam Simmons up in the Twin Cities area who's been putting on a black male healing conference for a decade. I didn't know anything about this stuff. Like I am discovering who I am. Black folks in America are a people disembodied. Our legacy begins with chattel slavery when we washed up on these shores. And then we get dropped in the middle of this thing. We get punished for being poor. We get punished for not having resources. We get marginalized for being who we are. And then we internalize notions of hatred for ourselves. And I am so embarrassed for a lot of the things that I thought about my own people before I realized that things weren't as they seemed. And so getting along with myself and picking up a book, that was helpful. There's a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me. They're basically 12 textbooks used to teach American history in this country. And it's run by a cartel. Like, I see some nods. Like, the way that stuff gets into these history books is fascinating. It really should be blown apart. It's rough. And the reason we have to have Black History Month is because our education system has been whitewashed. When Mike Brown got killed, and I saw this boy bleeding out on the concrete for hours, man, I was undone. Because, we knew things were kind of bad, but, Trayvon Martin was the first time that many middle-class Black Americans felt unsafe. You saw it on their faces, you saw it in the newscasters, you saw it in the hysteria that emerged. People felt unsafe. That was a gated community. He did everything right. And Mike Brown, for me, that tore me up. I didn't have a way of navigating this. I didn't have a way of thinking about this. I was really active on social media at the time. We'll come back to social media later. I was really active on social media at the time, and I saw this unfold. That's really where the genesis of the magazine was. So, I saw these tweets, this guy just got shot out, and I started following all the writers and reporters. And the turning point for our culture was citizen journalism, where regular everyday people like us flew to Ferguson and turned these on. And I saw law enforcement officials pointing rifles at unarmed members of the press. And I saw my countrymen being tear gassed. I saw tanks rolling down West Florissant on a split screen on CNN where President Obama was talking about keeping the peace. I saw protesters in Gaza telling Black folks in Ferguson how to make makeshift gas masks. That tore me up. This is America.
Yeah.
Hey, am I crazy?
Yes. It's
Anyway, I found a lot of the voices and the journalists and the people who really cared, people who are already plugged into this consciousness, who knew that things were fairly abysmal in America. And my magazine, AbernathyMagazine.com, this is very much my journey to understanding what this system is that I've been dropped into. I didn't ask for this. You didn't ask for this. And we start this conversation in the middle. Same way with this diversity and inclusion in tech conversation. It's an utter farce.
Excuse me, why did you why did you make Abernathy magazine?
It's a great question. So, I grew up thinking that things were okay for Black people in this country. Maybe just okay. But I had a lot of things that didn't make sense when I saw a lot of bad things happening to Black people in the news. And so I wanted to create a place where I could answer that question for myself and for other people who wanted to learn along. And so we publish articles where we talk about the things that we're proud of, where we talk about the books that have inspired us, where we talk about the leaders who are doing really important work in our communities and in the world. And my hope is that people will feel inspired, that people will feel happy to be who they are and how they look, and that people will feel proud when they look in the mirror, because I desperately needed to feel proud of who I was and who I am. And I do, but it has been a journey. And because I grew up comfortably, and I know a lot of people who did not grow up comfortably, and I've been through a lot of pain in my life, I know that if I have suffered in the way that I have suffered, quietly, without anybody knowing, that there are a lot of other people who are hurting as well. And so my hope is that through my magazine and through my work and through conversations like this, we can all feel a little bit better. Because when we step away from these ideas that success means a big house and a boat and retiring, what's really important is that we love ourselves and that we love each other and that we take care of each other. There's nothing else that's important.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.